My mom demanded I cover my favorite brother's honeymoon as I have a good job and he deserves it way more than. You won't believe what happened. I said no to a ridiculous request, and my own mother, the woman who raised me, tried to steal $15,000 from my bank account. The fraud alert went off, the police showed up at her door, and now she's begging me to drop the charges. Growing up, being the second son in my family felt like being a background extra in someone else's epic movie. My older brother, Kevin, was the star. Always had been. From the moment I could form memories, everything revolved around him. Kevin's football games, Kevin's grades, Kevin's friends, Kevin's future. Me. I was just there. Taking up space, breathing the same air as the golden child. My mom, Linda, never even tried to hide her favoritism. Some parents at least pretend to treat their kids equally, not her. She wore it like a badge of honor. Kevin got the bigger room even though by 14 I was already taller. Kevin got the brand new car when he turned 16, while I inherited his rusted Honda Civic with a broken AC and a passenger door that only opened from the inside. Kevin got his college fully paid for. Me. I was told to figure it out myself because money was tight. Funny how money was only tight when it came to me. My dad passed away when I was 11. Heart attack. Quick. Sudden. One day he was there, the next he was just gone. He was the only one who ever truly saw me. Really saw me. He'd take me fishing on Saturday mornings while Kevin slept in. Taught me to balance a checkbook when I was 9. Told me that hard work was the only thing no one could ever take away from me. I believed him. I still do. After he died, whatever small buffer existed between me and my mom's indifference completely vanished. Kevin became her entire world. I became the other kid who just happened to live in her house. The months after Dad's funeral were rough. I'd sit at the dinner table while Mom fussed over Kevin's grades and activities, asking him about his friends and his plans. She barely looked at me, barely asked how I was handling the loss of the only person who made me feel like I mattered. I learned to grieve alone. Learned to process things internally. Learned that expecting comfort from her was a complete waste of energy. I learned early on that complaining got me nowhere. Every time I dared point out the obvious favoritism, my mom would hit me with some variation of the same speech. Kevin is more social. Kevin has more potential. Kevin needs more support. Kevin deserves it. The message was painfully clear. Kevin mattered. I did not. So, I stopped expecting anything from her. I focused on myself. I started working part-time jobs at 15, saved every dollar I could. Got decent grades without anyone checking my homework or attending my parent-teacher conferences. When it came time for college, I applied for every scholarship and grant imaginable. Got into a state school 3 hours away. I paid my own way through a combination of financial aid, working at the campus library, and eating ramen 5 nights a week. I majored in accounting because I figured numbers don't lie. Numbers don't play favorites. A balance sheet doesn't care if you're the golden child or the invisible one. It just tells you the truth. And I like that. I needed that. My professors were the first people since my dad who seemed to recognize that I had potential. They encouraged me to pursue my CPA, helped me with internship applications. One of them wrote me a recommendation letter that still makes me emotional when I think about it. He called me one of the most dedicated students he had ever taught. Dedicated. That word meant everything coming from someone who actually paid attention. Kevin, meanwhile, floated through a business degree at a more expensive private school. Mom took out loans to cover what his scholarships didn't. He graduated with mediocre grades and a sense of entitlement the size of Texas. He bounced around jobs for years. Nothing was ever good enough for him. Nothing was ever his fault when things fell apart. The economy was bad. His boss was unfair. The company didn't recognize his talents. Classic Kevin. Always the victim of circumstances, never the architect of his own problems. I, on the other hand, graduated, got my CPA license, and landed a job at a mid-sized accounting firm in Columbus, Ohio. Nothing fancy, just solid, steady work. I kept my head down, did my job well, and slowly moved up. By 32, I was a senior accountant with a nice apartment, a reliable car I bought with cash, and a savings account that would make my younger self weep with joy. No debt, no drama. Just a quiet life I built brick by brick without anyone's help. Kevin, at 35, was on his 4th career pivot. He'd done pharmaceutical sales, insurance, real estate, and most recently was a junior associate at some random financial planning firm. Still living paycheck to paycheck, still borrowing money from Mom, still the golden child who could do no wrong in her eyes. When Kevin announced he was getting married to his girlfriend, Ashley, you would have thought he cured cancer. My mom called me crying happy tears. Her baby was getting married. The wedding was going to be beautiful. Kevin deserved this happiness. Everything was Kevin, Kevin, Kevin. I congratulated him when I saw him at the engagement party. Shook his hand. Told him I was happy for him. And honestly, part of me was. I didn't hate Kevin. He was just a guy who'd been handed everything his whole life and never learned to work for anything. That was more my mom's fault than his. He was what she made him. The wedding planning consumed the next year. Mom was deeply involved in every decision. The venue, the flowers, the catering. She contributed heavily from her retirement savings, which made me cringe a little, knowing how irresponsible that was. But it was her money, her choice, not my business. I was invited to the wedding as a guest, not a groomsman. Kevin chose his college buddies and some guy from his gym. His own brother didn't make the cut. When my mom called to tell me about the wedding party, she said, "Kevin just feels closer to his friends." You understand? Like I was supposed to accept being sidelined at my own brother's wedding as normal. Which, in our family, it absolutely was. I remember shopping for my wedding outfit alone, standing in the store looking at suits I could afford to buy outright, while thinking about how different things were for Kevin. His groomsmen probably had their suits paid for, probably had bonding experiences and rehearsal dinners and all the things that come with being valued. I picked out a nice charcoal suit that fit well and cost less than a month's rent. Practical. Understated. Like me. I went to the wedding. Sat at a table near the back with some distant cousins I barely knew. Watched Kevin and Ashley exchange vows, clapped when everyone else clapped. Ate the overpriced chicken. Made small talk with relatives who couldn't quite remember what I did for a living or where I lived. Left early without anyone noticing. Just another day of being invisible in my own family. That should have been the end of it. Kevin was married. Life went on. But 3 months after the wedding, I got a phone call that changed everything. It was a Tuesday evening. I'd just gotten home from work, loosened my tie, and was about to heat up some leftover pasta when my phone rang. Mom's name flashed on the screen. We talked maybe once a month, usually brief conversations where she updated me on Kevin's life and asked surface-level questions about mine without really listening to the answers. Standard stuff. I answered, expecting the usual. What I got was something else entirely. She started with small talk. How was work? How's the weather in Columbus? Did you see the pictures from Kevin's wedding that Ashley posted on social media? Then she pivoted. I could hear the shift in her voice, that careful, calculated tone she used when she wanted something. Kevin and Ashley really need a proper honeymoon, she said. They couldn't afford one right after the wedding because of all the expenses. But Ashley has been so stressed with her new job, and Kevin has been working so hard. They deserve a nice trip to really celebrate their marriage, something special. Maybe 2 weeks in Hawaii or the Caribbean. I made a non-committal sound, wondering where this was going. My mom continued, the thing is, I already spent so much on the wedding. I don't have much left to give them. And Kevin is still getting established in his career. They're not in a position to pay for it themselves. But you have a good job. You've been working at that firm for years. You don't have a wife or kids to spend money on. You have savings. She paused. I stayed silent, letting her finish. I think it would be really nice if you paid for their honeymoon, she said. As a gift from their family. Kevin would be so grateful. It would mean so much to them. I actually laughed. Not a big laugh, just a short exhale of disbelief. I asked her if she was serious. Of course I am serious, she said, sounding offended. What's funny about wanting to do something nice for your brother? I told her. Paying for a 2-week vacation to Hawaii for my adult brother and his wife is not a reasonable ask. That kind of trip would cost $8,000 to $10,000 minimum, probably more with flights and hotels and activities. That's not a gift. That's a financial undertaking. My mom made that familiar sighing sound, the one that meant I was being difficult. She said Kevin deserved it. He worked hard. Life hadn't been easy for him. He didn't have the same opportunities one had. I almost choked on that one. The same opportunities? Kevin got everything handed to him his whole life. I paid my own way through college while he had his tuition covered. I worked 60-hour weeks to build my career while he job-hopped and borrowed money from mom. But sure, he didn't have the same opportunities. I told her flat out, no. Just, no. I was not paying for their honeymoon. The temperature of the conversation dropped about 20 degrees. She asked why I had to be so selfish, why I couldn't just do this one thing for my brother. Did I realize how much it would mean to him? Did I not care about family? I told her I cared about family. I also cared about being treated like an ATM just because I made responsible financial decisions. I was not obligated to fund Kevin's vacations because he couldn't afford them himself. She brought up the wedding, how Kevin didn't ask me to be a groomsman. She said he felt bad about that, and this could be a way to smooth things over to show I didn't hold any grudges. I told her I wasn't holding a grudge. I also wasn't going to buy my way into a closer relationship with my brother using $10,000. If Kevin wanted to be closer, he could pick up the phone and call me sometime. We hadn't had a real conversation in over a year. My mom switched tactics. She said Ashley came from a family that traveled a lot. That Ashley's parents went on nice vacations. Kevin felt embarrassed that he couldn't provide the same for his wife. It was affecting his confidence, his self-esteem. I told her Kevin's self-esteem was not my financial responsibility. She got quiet for a moment. Then she said something that stuck with me. She said, "You have always been jealous of Kevin. Ever since you were kids. That's what this is about. You can't stand to see him happy." I told her I wasn't jealous. I was tired. Tired of being expected to give and give while getting nothing in return. Not even basic respect. I was not paying for the honeymoon, and that was final. Then I told her I had to go and hung up. I thought that would be the end of it. Uncomfortable conversation, but nothing new. My mom had guilt-tripped me before. I had said no before. Life went on. But 2 weeks later I checked my bank account and saw something that made my blood run cold. I've always been careful with money. Comes with the territory of being an accountant. I check my accounts regularly, track my spending, monitor for anything unusual. I have spreadsheets that would make most people's eyes glaze over. Every transaction categorized, every bill scheduled, every investment tracked to the penny. Call it obsessive, I call it responsible. So, when I logged into my primary checking account that Saturday morning and saw an attempted transfer of $15,000 to an external account I didn't recognize, I nearly dropped my coffee. My heart rate spiked immediately. That sick feeling in your stomach when you realize something is very, very wrong. $15,000. Not some small test charge to see if the account worked. A major withdrawal that would have wiped out months of careful saving. The transfer had been flagged and blocked by my bank's fraud detection system. Thank God for automated security protocols. But someone had tried to access my account. Someone had my login information. Someone had attempted to wire out a massive chunk of my savings. My first thought was identity theft. Some random scammer got my details off the dark web. It happens. I called my bank immediately. Went through all the verification steps. Started the process of securing my accounts. Changed all my passwords, set up additional authentication, filed a fraud report. The bank representative told me they would investigate. They could see the IP address that attempted the transfer. They could trace where the login came from. Standard procedure in cases like this. They'd be in touch. 3 days later, I got a call from a detective with the Columbus police. They had been contacted by my bank regarding the fraud report. The investigation had turned up some interesting information. The IP address used to attempt the transfer was traced to a residential location in Indiana. My mother's house. I sat there in silence for a good 10 seconds. The detective asked if I knew anyone at that address. I told him, yes. My mother lives there. He asked if I had given my mother access to my bank accounts. I said, no. Absolutely not. I had not shared my login credentials with anyone. He told me that based on the evidence, it appeared someone at that address had attempted to access my account using login information that was likely obtained without my consent. That constituted potential wire fraud and identity theft, both serious offenses. He asked if I wanted to proceed with pressing charges. My mind was racing. My own mother. Tried to steal $15,000 from me? Not ask. Not borrow. Steal. She attempted to take the money without my knowledge or permission and transfer it somewhere I couldn't trace. If my bank's security system hadn't flagged it, I might not have noticed until it was too late. I told the detective I needed a day to think about it. He understood, gave me his direct number, said to call when I made a decision. I spent that night staring at the ceiling, trying to process what had happened. My mother had crossed a line I never thought she would cross. Asking for money was one thing. Guilt-tripping was annoying but expected. But committing actual fraud, trying to steal from her own son? That was something else entirely. The next morning I called the detective back. I told him I wanted to press charges. He said he would proceed with the investigation and that officers would be dispatched to interview my mother. He warned me that these cases could get complicated when family was involved, that I should prepare myself for potential fallout. I told him I understood. 2 days later, I got a series of frantic text messages from my mother. The police had shown up at her door. They had questioned her about the attempted bank transfer. She was terrified and confused and demanding to know what was happening. I didn't respond. Then Kevin called. 7 times in 1 hour. I let every call go to voicemail. His messages ranged from confused to angry to pleading. What is going on? Why are the police involved? Mom is freaking out. Call me back. I did not call back. Finally, a text from my mother. One long paragraph that I will never forget. She admitted that she had been planning this for months. After I refused to pay for the honeymoon, she started looking for ways to access my money. She remembered that I had set her up as an emergency contact on some of my accounts years ago when I first started working, back when I still trusted her. She used that connection to social engineer her way past the bank's phone verification, pretending to be helping me with an emergency, got them to reset my password to one she controlled. She didn't think it was a big deal. She was going to use it for Kevin. For family. She didn't think I would notice right away. She didn't think it was really stealing because we're family and family shares everything. I read that message 3 times. Then I blocked her number. Word spread through the family faster than wildfire. Within a week, I was getting calls and messages from aunts, uncles, and cousins I hadn't spoken to in years. Everyone had an opinion. Everyone had advice. Most of it was garbage. People who had never asked how I was doing suddenly had strong feelings about how I should handle my mother's crime. My Aunt Patricia called to tell me I was tearing the family apart. That I needed to drop the charges and work this out privately. That sending my own mother to jail would be a stain on our family name forever. She talked for 20 minutes without letting me get a word in. Classic Patricia, always certain she knew best, even when she had about 10% of the relevant information. I told Aunt Patricia that my mother trying to steal $15,000 from me was the stain. I was just responding to it appropriately. My Uncle Robert sent a long email about forgiveness and moving forward. About how holding on to anger only hurts yourself. About how family bonds are more important than money. He included quotes from religious texts and inspirational speakers. Added a postscript about how he hoped I would find peace. It felt condescending in a way I couldn't quite articulate. Easy to talk about forgiveness when you're not the one who was betrayed. I replied with a short message. When someone tries to steal from you, that's not a family bond. That's a crime. Then I archived his email and moved on. Kevin finally got through to me by calling from Ashley's phone. I answered without checking the caller ID. Rookie mistake. He launched right in. Demanded to know why I was doing this. Accused me of trying to destroy the family over money. Said I had always been cold and distant and this proved it. I let him finish his rant. Then I asked him one question. Did you know? He went quiet. I asked again. Did you know Mom was planning to access my account and take money for your honeymoon? More silence. Then a defensive response. She just wanted to help us. She thought you wouldn't mind. You have plenty of money. I told him I minded very much. I also told him that if he knew about it beforehand and did nothing to stop it, he was complicit in the fraud. That made him an accessory. He started backpedaling immediately. He didn't know the details. Mom just said she would figure out the honeymoon money. He assumed she had savings or was going to ask me directly. He didn't know she would do something like this. I didn't believe him. Not entirely. But it didn't matter. The police would sort out who knew what. My job was to protect myself and my assets. Kevin's involvement or lack thereof was for the investigators to determine. I told him we were done talking and hung up. Then I blocked Ashley's number too. The next few weeks were a blur of legal procedures and emotional exhaustion. My mother was formally charged with wire fraud and attempted identity theft, both felonies in the state of Indiana. She was released on bail, which Kevin paid, probably using money he borrowed from someone else. Her attorney reached out to mine. Yes, I got a lawyer, to discuss potential settlement options. Apparently, my mother was willing to do almost anything to make this go away. She was terrified of going to prison, terrified of having a criminal record, terrified of what her friends and neighbors would think. My lawyer asked what I wanted. Did I want to push for maximum penalties? Did I want to negotiate? Did I want her to pay restitution and agree to certain conditions? I thought about it for a long time. Part of me wanted to see this through to the end. Let the justice system do its job. Let her face the full consequences of her actions. She made a choice. She could live with the results. But another part of me just wanted it to be over. I didn't want to spend the next year of my life in courtrooms and depositions. I didn't want to relive this betrayal over and over again while lawyers argued about intent and evidence. I wanted to move on with my life. I told my lawyer to negotiate, but I had conditions. My lawyer and I sat down and outlined exactly what I wanted from any potential settlement. This wasn't about revenge. This was about accountability and closure. If my mother wanted this to go away, she would have to earn it. First condition: full written admission of guilt. A detailed letter, notarized and legally binding, admitting what she did and acknowledging that it was wrong. No vague apologies, no minimizing language, no blaming me for making her feel desperate. A clear, unambiguous admission that she attempted to commit fraud against her own son. Second condition: complete financial restitution. Not just repayment of what she tried to take, which she didn't actually get, but coverage of all my legal fees, the cost of enhanced security measures I had to implement on my accounts, and compensation for the time and stress this caused me. Total amount, around $12,000. Third condition: a formal restraining order. She would have no contact with me for a minimum of 5 years. No calls, no texts, no emails, no showing up at my home or workplace. If she violated the order, the original charges would be reinstated automatically. Fourth condition: she would have to complete a financial crimes awareness course. Some kind of program that educates people on the legal and ethical implications of fraud. I wanted documentation that she completed it. Fifth condition: she would have to sign a document acknowledging that she had no claim to any of my current or future assets. No inheritance expectations, no assumptions about being included in my will. Our financial relationship was severed permanently. My lawyer raised an eyebrow at a few of these, but said they were all reasonable and enforceable. She sent the terms to my mother's attorney. The response came back within 48 hours. My mother agreed to everything. I was honestly a little surprised. I expected pushback on at least some of it, but apparently the threat of prison time was a powerful motivator. Her attorney said she was devastated and remorseful, and would sign whatever documents were necessary to make this right. I didn't feel satisfied exactly. There was no triumphant moment, no sense of victory. Just a heavy resignation that this was where my relationship with my mother had ended up. Lawyers and legal documents and restraining orders. We scheduled a signing meeting at my lawyer's office. Neutral territory. My mother would be there with her attorney. I would be there with mine. We would finalize everything and then go our separate ways. The day of the meeting, I arrived early, sat in the conference room with a cup of water I didn't drink and a stack of papers I had already memorized. My lawyer made small talk about the weather and sports. I nodded along without really listening. When my mother walked in, I almost didn't recognize her. She looked older, smaller, somehow. The confident woman who had dismissed my concerns and demanded my money was gone. In her place was someone who looked defeated. Broken. She sat across from me, her attorney beside her. Our eyes met briefly and I saw tears forming in hers. She opened her mouth like she wanted to say something, but her attorney put a hand on her arm and shook his head. This was a legal proceeding, not a family therapy session. We went through the documents one by one. My lawyer explained each section. My mother's attorney confirmed she understood. She signed where indicated. Initials here, full signature there, date at the bottom. When we got to the admission of guilt letter, she hesitated. Her hand trembled slightly as she held the pen. But she signed it. Every page. The restraining order paperwork was next. 5 years of no contact. She signed that too. Finally, the financial restitution agreement. She would pay the $12,000 within 90 days. If she missed the deadline, additional penalties would apply. Signed and done. The whole process took about an hour. When it was over, we all stood. My lawyer shook hands with her attorney. Professional courtesy. I didn't shake anyone's hand. I just gathered my copies of the documents and headed for the door. My mother spoke then. The first words she had said directly to me the entire meeting. She said she was sorry. That she never meant for things to go this far. That she just wanted to help Kevin. And she made a terrible mistake. I stopped at the door but did not turn around. I told her that the time for apologies was before she logged into my bank account. Before she tried to steal from me. Before she chose Kevin over me one final time. Now it was just words. Empty words that could not undo what she did. Then I walked out. I did not look back. 6 months after the settlement, I got promoted to manager. Started overseeing a team of junior accountants. My boss told me I had a gift for leadership. I told him I just treated people the way I wished I had been treated growing up. He didn't ask for details. Around that time, I started dating a woman named Michelle. Met her at a networking event. She worked as a project manager for a nonprofit that helped families find housing. Smart. Practical. Zero tolerance for nonsense. After 3 months of dating, I told her the whole story about my family. The favoritism, the fraud, the legal battle. She listened, asked a few clarifying questions, then said, "You did the right thing." That was it. No drama, no judgment, just acceptance. Meanwhile, the fallout in my family continued. My Aunt Patricia called me 8 months after the settlement to apologize. She said she had finally gotten the full story from my mother's own mouth during a family gathering. Heard how Mom had spent weeks planning it, how she manipulated the bank by pretending there was a family emergency, how she justified it as family helping family. Patricia said she was horrified. Said she never should have pressured me to drop charges without knowing the facts. I accepted her apology and we moved on. Kevin's marriage started showing cracks almost immediately. I heard through Patricia that Ashley's parents were not happy about the fraud scandal. They were wealthy, image-conscious people, and having in-laws involved in criminal proceedings was not part of their plan. Ashley started spending more time at her parents' house. Kevin started complaining that she was never around. 1 year after the settlement, my mother completed her financial crimes course and paid the full restitution amount, $12,000, right on schedule. My lawyer confirmed receipt. I deposited the check and didn't think about it again. 18 months after the settlement, Kevin called me from a number I didn't recognize. I picked up without thinking. He said he needed to talk. Said things were falling apart with Ashley. Said Mom was depressed and barely leaving the house. Said the whole family was a mess and it was all because of me. I told him the family was a mess because Mom committed a felony. I told him to lose my number. Then I hung up and blocked that number too. 2 years after the settlement, I bought a house. Small 3-bedroom in a quiet neighborhood. Paid 20% down from savings I had built up over the years. Michelle helped me pick out furniture. We adopted a dog from the shelter, a hyper mutt named Biscuit, who destroyed 2 pairs of shoes in his first week. I didn't care. The house felt like home. Michelle moved in 6 months later. We got engaged on a random Tuesday night while cooking dinner. No fancy proposal, just a conversation about the future that ended with me asking and her saying yes. We set a date for the following spring. 3 years after the settlement, I got another promotion. Senior manager now. Corner office with a window. My team had grown to 12 people. I was making more money than I ever thought I would. More importantly, I was respected. Valued. See. All the things I never got at home, I had built for myself at work. Around that same time, Kevin and Ashley officially divorced. Patricia gave me the update during one of our occasional phone calls. Said it was ugly. Ashley's lawyers were aggressive. Kevin ended up losing the house they had bought together with her parents' help. He moved back in with Mom at age 38. Full circle. 4 years after the settlement, Michelle and I got married. Small ceremony at a botanical garden. 30 guests. No family from my side except Aunt Patricia, who cried happy tears and told me my dad would have been proud. We honeymooned in Costa Rica for 10 days. Paid for it ourselves, every penny. When the 5-year restraining order expired, I waited to see what would happen. 2 weeks passed, then a month, then 3 months. No contact from my mother. I figured she had either moved on or was too afraid to reach out. Then, 18 months after the order expired, a letter arrived. The letter was from my mother. 4 pages, handwritten. She admitted everything. Said she failed me as a mother, not just with the fraud but my whole childhood. Said she finally understood how badly she had treated me. Said she wasn't asking for forgiveness. Just wanted me to know she was sorry. I read it once. Put it in a drawer. Did not respond. 2 weeks later, Kevin showed up at my workplace. Just walked into the lobby and asked the receptionist to calm me down. Security flagged it because he was getting agitated. I got the message and went to see what he wanted. He looked rough. Thinner than I remembered. Dark circles under his eyes. Clothes that looked like they'd been worn a few days in a row. Living with Mom again had clearly not been good for him. He said he needed to talk. I told him we had nothing to talk about. He said Mom was struggling. Said she barely ate, barely slept, spent most of her time volunteering at a food bank like she was trying to work off some kind of debt. He said the whole family was falling apart and I was the only one who could fix it. Said I owed it to Dad's memory to at least try. That last part got my attention. Using Dad against me. Classic manipulation tactic. I told him Dad would have been disgusted by what Mom did. Told him Dad taught me to work for what I wanted, not to steal it from family members. Kevin didn't have a response to that. He just stood there looking defeated. I told him the family was not my responsibility. I told him to leave before I called security. He left. I watched him walk to his car through the lobby windows, an old sedan with a dent in the rear bumper. A long way from the new cars Mom used to buy him. 3 months after that, I got a call from a hospital in Indiana. My mother had collapsed at the food bank. Dehydration and exhaustion. They found my number listed as an emergency contact, probably from years ago when I still lived at home. The nurse asked if I wanted to be notified of her condition. I told her to remove my number from the contact list. Then I hung up. Michelle asked me about it that night. I told her what happened. She asked how I felt. I told her I felt nothing. That was the truth. Whatever connection I once had to that woman had been severed so completely that hearing about her health crisis was like hearing about a stranger. A month after the hospital incident, Patricia called with news. Kevin had gotten a job. Entry-level position at a car dealership. Not glamorous but steady work. He was apparently trying to get his life together. Mom was out of the hospital and back to her routine. The family was limping along. Patricia asked if I would ever consider reconnecting. I told her no. She said she understood and didn't push it. 6 months later, Michelle told me she was pregnant. We were having a boy. I spent that night lying awake thinking about what kind of father I wanted to be. The answer was simple, the opposite of what I had experienced. Present, attentive, fair. I was going to see my son. Really see him. Every single day. We started preparing the nursery. Painted the walls. Assembled the crib. Biscuit was confused by all the new furniture but adapted quickly. Michelle and I talked about names for weeks, landed on James after my dad. Michelle loved the idea of honoring someone who had been so important to me. 2 months before the due date, another letter arrived from Indiana. This one was different. Not an apology. A notification. My mother had updated her will. She was leaving everything to Kevin, obviously, but she wanted me to know that she had set aside a small amount, $5,000, to be put in a trust for my child, any child I had. She said it wasn't much, but she wanted to do something for a grandchild she would probably never meet. I threw the letter away. If my kid ever needed $5,000, I would provide it myself. I didn't need her guilt money. Michelle went into labor on a Thursday morning. 14 hours later, James was born. 7 pounds 8 ounces. Healthy lungs. Full head of dark hair. When the nurse put him in my arms, I felt something I had never felt before. Complete. Like every struggle, every disappointment, every moment of being invisible had led to this. A family of my own. A son who would never doubt that he was loved. We brought James home 3 days later. Biscuit sniffed him cautiously, then appointed himself the baby's personal guardian. Michelle recovered quickly. I took 2 weeks off work. Spent every moment I could holding my son, feeding him, watching him sleep. Being present. Patricia called to congratulate us. She had heard through the grapevine. I thanked her and told her she was welcome to visit sometime. She was one of the few family members who had earned that invitation. She asked if I wanted her to tell my mother about the baby. I said no. If Mom wanted to know about my life, she could read my social media like everyone else. I was not giving her special access to information about my family. 3 months after James was born, I got one final communication from Indiana. Not a letter. A package. Inside was a small wooden box, handmade from the looks of it. Inside the box was my dad's watch. The one he wore every day until he died. The one I thought had been lost or thrown away years ago. There was a note with it. Just one sentence. Your father would have wanted you to have this. I sat with that watch for a long time. Ran my thumb over the worn leather band. Remembered Saturday mornings at the fishing hole. Remembered him teaching me about money and hard work. Remembered feeling seen. Then I put the watch in my dresser drawer next to the letters I never answered. I wasn't ready to wear it. Maybe someday. Maybe never. But I wasn't going to throw it away. That was the last contact I had with anyone from Indiana. No more letters. No more surprise visits. No more hospital calls. Just silence. Exactly as I had demanded. A lot has happened since I originally posted this. So here's where things stand now. James just turned 9 months old. Crawling everywhere, getting into everything. Biscuit follows him around the house like a furry bodyguard. Michelle went back to work part-time. We hired a nanny for 3 days a week. Life is busy and chaotic and exactly what I always wanted. Work is going well. I'm up for partner track now. My boss told me I'm one of the strongest candidates he has seen in years. The vote happens next quarter. Whatever happens, I'm proud of what I've built. Kevin got fired from the car dealership. Patricia told me during her last visit something about attendance issues. He's apparently doing some kind of online certification program now, trying to get into medical billing. Mom is helping pay for it. Some things never change. As for my mother, I haven't heard from her since the watch arrived. Patricia says she asks about me sometimes. Asks about the baby. Patricia tells her we're fine and leaves it at that. I appreciate her discretion. The letters and the watch are still in my dresser drawer. I look at them sometimes when I'm putting away laundry. I don't feel angry anymore. I don't feel sad. I just feel done. Like a chapter of my life that is completely closed. Last week, Michelle asked if I ever regret how things went down. If I wish I had handled it differently. I told her no. I protected myself. I built a life. I became a father. Everything I have now exists because I stopped waiting for people to value me and started valuing myself. So what do you think? Was I right to cut ties and protect myself, or should I have found a way to forgive? I really want to hear your thoughts in the comments below.